everybody before this. I appreciate everybody's patience. This is, WebEx isn't necessarily the most used platform for webinars, so we appreciate you, navigating anything to get into this with us. I am recording this tonight, and if there's anything that, afterwards you prefer that you went like on the record or whatever you want to say, just feel free to email after this. There'll be an email provided at the end. But we just want to make sure we capture this great content because, these three panelists are giving their time tonight, and we really appreciate it. So on that note, I do have little slides that hopefully will show up if I can get everything to work. Just some other little rules of the road is, have yourself muted unless you do have a question. Like I said, this is going to be kind of informal. We want to make sure that you get out of the conversation what you're looking to get out of it. And I think we can all just kind of roll with it and see how it goes. We do have some prepared questions to keep the conversation going as well. But as you can probably tell, the three people who are on the panel will be able to fill the conversation either way, I have confidence. So once again, I haven't even introduced myself. I'm Sarah Larson with Downtown Eau Claire, Inc., and I am a business and communication specialist for DECI, and then also with the City of Eau Claire Economic Development. My colleague Dustin Olson is also on the call, and he helps run events and everything and anything Downtown Eau Claire, Inc., and communications as well. So once again, I'm going to try to share appropriate screens and see what happens. All right, then you guys disappear, which makes me scared. All right, so hopefully you're in the right spot, which is operating a successful business in downtown. We have lovely panelists on here with us today. We have Amy Erickson, who is the owner of Latitude 44 Yoga Studio and The Well. We have Matt Pavish, the owner of Raggedy Man, and also Blaine Methune, who is the owner of Ramon's Ice Cream Parlor. They are all past winners of the Jumpstart Downtown Eau Claire Business Competition, which hopefully you guys know a little bit more about. But I'll tell you that we have a grand prize this year of $5,000 sponsored by Royal Credit Union. We also have a $2,500 second place prize. That's a combination of all of our other sponsors, which are listed on our webpage, and then a third place prize, which is $1,000. We'll go over some more of the details of that at the end. And I wanted to start off by letting the panelists kind of go through who they are and just a little bit of a background and when they opened their businesses downtown and when they won the competition. So we'll go Amy first because Amy is listed first on this beautiful graphic.
Okay. So my name is Amy Erickson, and I founded Latitude 44 Yoga Studio in 2015, and yesterday was our 5-year anniversary. So 2015 was the year that I won the Jumpstart grant and Jim Mashepsky grant for Latitude. And then last year, 2019, is when I opened The Well. What else do you want?
Nope, that's great.
Okay.
We'll go over to Matt next.
Hi, so I'm Matt Pavish. I'm the owner of Raggedy Man. I won the Jumpstart in 2018. So I, mid-COVID, started my 3rd year at the shop downtown. So general gift, that's sort of our jam.
Thank you.
And then I'm Blaine Methune with Ramon's Ice Cream Parlor. It was my wife, Kayla, and I that came up with Ramon's in 2016. So it's the 2016 competition, I believe, that we won. And then in 2017 was when we officially opened our doors to the public. So we're huge fans of the Jumpstart program. And quite honestly, I'm a procrastinator by nature. And I owe everything, honestly, to the Jumpstart competition because it was the Jumpstart competition that gave me the deadline to actually get everything put together to actually start the business. So otherwise, I'd probably still be doing build out as we speak right now.
Oh, that's what were you going to say, Matt?
Said solid pitch right from the get-go on that one.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I think we're done here. So everybody have a great night. All right. So we'll launch into some of the questions, like I said, that we have prepared. And if there's anything that, kind of sparks another question that you have, feel free to unmute yourself. You can also use the chat. I'll be trying my best to watch that as well. All right, so kind of off of Blaine's his little pitch that he just gave, how long did it take from first having the idea for your business until opening your business? And feel free, panelists, to kind of jump in as natural.
Well, maybe I'll kick it off. Just we came up with the idea for Ramones. It was actually June of 2015. That's when we kind of had the original spark and the inspiration. It was after we had our 10-year anniversary over in Stillwater. So it was June of 2015 that we actually came up with the idea. And quite honestly, it wasn't until we purchased the building that we're currently in March of 2016, and we still kind of had the idea. But then I think I can't remember if it was Mike, I want to say it was Mike Schatz, who was this development director in Eau Claire at the time. Right away, he just said, well, here's some of the resources that are available. Jumpstart is one. And at that point, I think the competition was in August. So I had our work cut out for us. And I can't remember the timeline exactly, but about a month or so before the competition voting happened, I think we had about 2 months maybe to put our business plan together and really get everything in line. So for us, we still didn't even open until May of 2017. So for us, it was about 2 full years before actually opening our doors. But after getting the business plan and everything else put together, it was about 9 months or so.
Yeah, for Latitude, it was about a year after the decision to, start the business plan and develop more structure around the ideas that I had until the build out started was about a year later. And then I think the Jumpstart competition was in August that year as well. So if I remember correctly, I had submitted my application like a couple of weeks before the studio opened, and then it was announced like a week after the studio opened. So it's just a lot of well-timed attention for the studio. So that worked out really great. And for the well, the idea/proposal for the business came maybe like 2 months before I announced the business. So for that one, I kind of did it in a more, exposed, open to the public process of opening and having people assist in selecting materials and designing things with us, which was fun. So from yes, I'm going to do it to the well opening was about 4 months.
A little different for me. So I actually submitted my application the day before I opened, which goes to speak. Like, I think with the Jumpstart, I know that I'm good friends with Aaron Salmon from like Shift, right? And I think a big thing with the competition is appreciating that it's not necessarily like a validation of your business. So for me, it was like, I'm doing this regardless if I get this, right? And so it's like, I've submitted it, and then like, because one of the stipulations you have to submit it before you open, it was literally like the day before I opened, I submitted my application. It's like my steps were already there, like I'd done the legwork, and so for me, it was like, this is happening. This would be a wonderful thing to help supplement some of the costs that I've already put into making this happen. But I think, I mean, like, I don't know, having conversations like Shift, right? I think they were with you, Blaine, I think.
Were they?
I think they were. So, right, what I'm going to say, what I mean is that, like, for me, I submitted the day before my business existed. I had been functioning with it, and Jumpstart was really good, like, positive affirmation that, like, this is something that we can support, this is something we feel good about. But I do think it's important to note that it doesn't necessarily validate a good business, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, clearly the three of us have very well established things, and it goes to support that, like, there's really good funding and good energy behind companies that want to be downtown, that support downtown. But there's a lot of them too that also, it's sort of a grab bag in terms of who you're competing against too. There's a lot of really good people in town, and you don't necessarily always have the same batch.
Yeah, that's a good point. We see a lot of variety of applications, which is great, because I think that makes
for me it was right. So I mean, like mine is substantially different than the both of you. I had no idea. This is so fun. Is that like right? So like I had my business plan. I had gone through all the hurdles and whatnot. And for me, the jumpstart was more of just like a it is a grant, but like it was like in the same way that now a grant is sort of funding for like helping support some of the things I've already done is for me.
And I was going to just speak to a couple things on that too. We've listened to, this is the 15th year actually of the Jumpstart competition, which is crazy and exciting to see the list. We put them all on our website of past winners. And a lot of them are still around, which is really, encouraging that our community supports such great businesses in the downtown and the variety of businesses that we have in the downtown. What I was going to say too is that we did get some great feedback from one of our DECI board members and past participants, and Becca Cook, she helped continue this on and develop it. She said that a lot of times that our entrepreneurs in the downtown need like funding in the first 2 years of business. And so that whole thing that Matt was talking about, like, well, I applied the day before I opened because that was kind of the stipulation. We did adjust that for this year. So it's now more of a range. Whereas if people applied, if they opened after the deadline last year, all the way till, hey, I think I'm going to open my business in 2021 in the same time frame, all of those people are eligible this year. So that's why you do see some people on the call who have maybe started their businesses already in the downtown and are eligible this year. So we're really glad to make an adjustment just based off of people's feedback, because it was kind of strange internally for us too to try to figure out like, well, when did they open, or what does that look like? So we have made some adjustments.
Well, and I also, for me too, I mean, my background isn't business by any means. My background's graphic design. So I'm not an accountant. I'm not a business like Carlson grad, but so for me, it also gave me the confidence to be able to speak the language during the presentation, which definitely helps, right? Like my anxiety was like, are they going to ask me? So are they going to talk to me about like, well, in your third year, you projected it's going to be 15% of this number. And I was just like, I was prepared for that because I have a lot of anxiety, but it was less about that and more about like, what are you contributing to downtown? Like, what is your moment with downtown? And I think that's really big, and being able to speak to that is really huge. And I think being downtown and already having those conversations for me, I think gave me an advantage in terms of like how I was able to talk about like, well, I've been downtown now. Like, I know what it's like. I've been building my stuff, and it included me in the downtown conversation already before I had to like talk about why I should be part of it. Right.
Yeah. So something else you guys kind of touched on, I would like to hear from you guys is I think we're starting to realize that the Eau Claire community and Chippewa Valley have a lot of really great resources for businesses who are trying to start up. Can you guys talk a little bit about other community resources that you did utilize to help get started, whether that be, working with local lenders or, other competitions, and maybe even some mentors that you turn to?
You want to start, Amy? No?
Sure. Thanks, Blaine.
You look like you're ready to say something.
that was like, hey, somebody else, but no, it's fine.
I mean,
well, Matt, we heard enough, but no.
I see. That's fine. I'm going to close the store because I have some loud neighbors, but you can start talking.
Other than the Jumpstart grant, both of my businesses have been self-funded. So I haven't utilized any resources within the community outside of the Jumpstart grant, which has been a super helpful add for that. Jim Mashevsky was, I would say, a mentor, but that was before I even had decided on the kind of business I was going to be opening, but had many discussions with him, as well as Dan Klumpner before he had passed away.
Yeah, I guess for me, I didn't have a lot of resources available when we first opened up or when we were forming our business. But I mentioned Mike Schatz before. He was actually a childhood friend of mine, a friend's dad growing up. So as soon, like the moment that we closed on our building at 503 Galloway Street, I literally drove straight to Mike's office and kind of told him our idea. And he was just enthusiastically behind and supporting of our business. So that was kind of the first nod in that regard. And then again, he was the one that kind of told me about these avenues that we could take, and Jumpstart being one of them. A big one for us was our lender, and we work with Royal Credit Union. We have worked with them for about 12 years or so. We have a property management company that we own as well. We have a handful of rentals that we own, and our lender was phenomenal through the start of it. Dan Lapham is the gentleman that I've worked with for a long time, and he's just been great. After we opened our doors, he even opened my mind to other ways that we could get additional funds and lines of credits and credit cards, and all of that just kind of opened up for us as well. So that was a relationship that played out really nicely for me. But honestly, I might be skipping ahead to a future question. But really, and I kind of was joking with Matt earlier, but really, I think the banter that we have as small business owners, I feel like it is such a phenomenal community. And Meredith, you and I had coffee the other day, and we were kind of talking about this as well. But really, it is. I feel like so many of us have so many different things in common. Whether it's our age, our familial status, our social views, so many things that we have in common. And I think all of us want other businesses to succeed. So like Matt has brought up Shift a couple times. I mean, anytime anybody brings up, hey, do you want to meet for coffee? I love Acoustic and some of these other places, but Shift is my go-to. Just because I know that it's another family business that relies on every single dollar that comes in. And I think that's what's been successful for us. And I would have to imagine it's something that's successful for Matt and Amy as well, is those community relationships that they've built, not only business-wise, but those individual relationships that they've built with their clients and customers and everybody that walks in the door, whether they buy something or not. So for me, the relationships have just continued to grow. Matt and Alicia from Blue Ox, I'm not a runner, don't pretend to be a runner, but I struck up a relationship with them after they came into Ramones one night, and it's just they were part of the 2017 Jumpstart Award, and I was about to do backflips. I think after they won the award, I was just so excited for these people. And to this day, I think all of us are just advocates for one another's businesses, which I think is phenomenal. And as far as mentors go, I haven't had a lot of mentors. I think Dan, our lender at RCU, he's been a phenomenal mentor and somebody that's really helped us out. But another gentleman that in the later years now that we've been open, Joel Jacobson, who owns the Ace Hardwares in Eau Claire, has been a phenomenal resource and just somebody that he kind of reached out to me, and he's somebody that I lean on. And this COVID stuff has not been necessarily easy for anybody, I don't think. And just having other people that you can talk to that get it, because not all of your friends are always going to get it or really care too much about talking about business and that kind of thing. But I think as you form relationships with other business owners, they get it and they want to talk about it, and they want to know how your business is doing, and they know that you want to listen to their story as well. So I think Jumpstart is a phenomenal jumping point to say that I think there's a family feel to it, honestly. Like knowing that Amy and Matt were in the competition at one point, I feel like that's just one more thing that we have in common. It's a wonderful thing.
Nice, thank you. Matt, did you feel like you had any other mentors and or local resources that you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, there is. I mean, for me, there's a couple. So I mean, I'm very fortunate. Growing up in Eau Claire, my dad was a business owner in the area. He ran oil construction. So through him, I definitely benefited through like resources in terms of like connections and just having conversations with people, right? So people I'm bumping into now, like chamber events or decky events or these things like I have relationships with. And so for me, I'm very fortunate for that. One of my best friends is Kathy Ayers. She owned Inside Lines, which used to be where like Avalon is on Water Street. They moved to downtown. They've been in the area for over 20 years as an interior design shop, and they were one of my first places that hired me when I moved back to town after college. So just having that connection with somebody who is sort of, it's not the same realm, but it's the same energy. It's retail. We go to the same market. Like she's the one who opened me up to like the Atlanta market where I do all my buying. So being able to have somebody like that as a resource was huge. And then the other big one that anybody who's starting a business in the area I recommend is Luke Kempkin from the SBDC. Talk to him. I mean, I sent him an email today actually to sit down and like plug in new numbers, to just be like, here's where I'm at with COVID. What does this look like moving forward? The SBDC, what is Small Business Development
Center. Yep.
Center. Huge, and it's a free resource, right? So like, again, not a business was never part of my journey. It was always graphic design. I worked for a big company as their lead graphic designer and just got really burnt out as part of the journey. I couldn't sit on YouTube anymore. And so to shift to opening an actual business, I met with Western Dairyland, and nothing against them, but the man I met with was less than helpful. The resources weren't there. And then I met with Luke, and it was just like, oh yeah, these are the things. He gave me like a roadmap for what I need to do. And then with Jumpstart too, it was a good point to be like, these are the things that I need to check off my list to present to that, and to be able to speak about my business comfortably. And then I think I've had like I think I've had 3 or 4 meetings since opening the business with Luke, in terms of just like touching base and being like, here's where our numbers are at. What does this look like? He's got all the algorithms and Excel documents, and you can talk to him and be like, here's the deal. Like, what does this look like? Like, if I do X amount, what does that look like? And so the conversation is very open. It's very honest. It's a insane resource. And through COVID, Luke has been the best, I think, resource in terms of keeping up to date, like PPP, EIDL, and like he does really good updates, and that are very like easy to understand for me, which is really nice because everything keeps changing, right? I mean, the first one I applied for was supposed to be X amount of dollars, and ended up being X amount of dollars. And now like the process is, well, if you want to get forgiveness for it, it took 3 minutes to apply for, but it's going to take 4 hours to unapply for, right? Like, it's the most insane process, but they keep changing it, and he updates that. So like most of the conversations, like, just hold off. They're going to get down to a page, right? Like, it's a weird world we live in. We all know that, but the FBD, they're amazing. They're a huge resource that is very underutilized, I think, in the area.
Yeah, Luke is great, and they just hired somebody as well that has like a marketing specialty as well, named Harley Judas. So yeah, I highly recommend connecting with them. Yeah. So the other thing about that too that I just want to highlight is Luke is a member of our revolving loan fund committee for the city of Eau Claire. I know that these 3 individuals didn't mention that at all, but that's the other side of my job, is helping connect people with resources in the city. And so there's some loan programs that have, really competitive interest and things for updating an older building. So sometimes in the downtown, that's something that you might, encounter. And then there's some other, micro loan funds and things like that. And then also their acronym is really hard and I get it wrong all the time. So I'm just gonna go with Regional Business Fund. It's part of the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, I think. That's a mouthful. But they also have some great funding, but that we actually can't lend together for in the city of Eau Claire, just a random note, but they do have some really great resources there as well. So yeah, thanks for highlighting those, you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, the RBF, I will say that we must have been right at the tail end of that, because we were able to get RBF funds, and that was for the facade and then a micro loan, and that helped us out with purchasing some of the equipment and other merchandise that we had inside the shop.
Nice. Yeah. And there is some things we can partner on. It's just, we usually involve each other in the conversations. I think that's starting to happen more and more in our community, as these resource partners are talking, so that we can help support our business community as best as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know we've touched on COVID a little bit, and I don't really want to dwell on that because I know you all have different realities with that. But on the flip side, of a more positive side, can you guys talk about what you're most proud of as a business owner?
Well, I'll jump out right away.
I didn't write down notes on this one.
So for us, The team that we've built, I think, is something that I'm the most proud about. And it might sound like a shtick, but quite honestly, it's the people that we've hired. Going into all of this, I'm a millennial as well. A lot of people kind of give millennials a bad rap, but the majority of the people that we have work for us are in between that age of, say, 16 and 20, 21 years old. We've been blown away just by the commitment and the desire and the level-headedness of so many of these people. They feel like, it seems like they have life kind of figured out at such a young age, and they know what they want to do. They know that they want to be philanthropic. They know that they want to, help other people. And we've loved seeing the building of the team and the friendships that have been gained by our team. That's been phenomenal. We've had some other successes, I would say, on a more personal level. One of the big things that we do is a Cash for a Cause program. In the three and a half years that we've been open, we've raised just over $90,000 that we've given away back to nonprofits and charity organizations in downtown and around Eau Claire. That's something that we've been proud of. And honestly, I think above all, I think it's all of this just kind of coming together, and it's, again, kind of going back to the community of business owners and that kind of thing. But being a part of my hometown and having a place in downtown Eau Claire that is so recognizable, and that we have family and friends that are out to dinner and they overhear a couple or somebody a table over talking about our business in downtown. It's such a humbling feeling to know that there's other people that recognize the business. And quite honestly, for us, for me especially, every single time we came down in the summer, and if there was anybody outside standing in line, it's like this moment of disbelief for us, just to see people waiting in line for a business that we created. It's just, again, it's just been very, very humbling. But I think it goes back to the community that we're in and the community that we try to build as well. And I think all of us here, Amy and Matt as well, our businesses are aligned with the community, that it's already something that people want and they desire. And it's these people and the owners of the business as well that people really believe in. And the product is wonderful, but it's the people behind it. And I just feel very lucky and very fortunate to be considered one of those people.
Man.
Sorry, you couldn't give me a laugh, cackle, or clap through half of that. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
It's huge, right? So for me right now, again, part of my journey is that I am a single entity, right? I'm a sole proprietor. So the business right now is just me and my dog, which people love. But there's a different energy, I think, for me with that. And I am very fortunate with a lot of these things, especially with COVID that's been happening, that is happening. I'm fortunate. I don't have a partner. I don't have a family. I don't have kids. Like, not going to go into that. But what I'm most proud of as a business owner, I think, for me, is the voice it gives me downtown. And one thing I wish that other people appreciate is that you don't have to be a business owner to have a voice in the area. I think that's something like, and again, I'm very fortunate I'm on committees and what's nots and who's nots, but I think being downtown and being able to like speak to the traffic and the foot traffic energy, there's such an excitement, and there's such a camaraderie. Like, it does feel like living in a neighborhood, right? It's like, it's Mr. Rogers in like the most idyllic way possible, is that I can walk down the street and like wave at like, hey, Tom at Clancy's, or hey, John at Hooligans. Like, there's this really amazing sense of community within the downtown that I think other places don't have. And it's so disgusting and so beautiful. It's I like to think of it as like Eau Claire is like the Reno of the Midwest. Like, we're the biggest city, right? Like, everybody knows everybody's business. We're all connected. But we all support each other. And this is something I will continuously say until it's so gross that I can have clips of me saying it, is that Eau Claire doesn't have a bigger fan than Eau Claire, right? Through all of this, there has been no bigger. I mean, I had somebody come in and give me like $10 one day and just be like, here, like, you're a small business, either keep it or spend it locally, right? Like, it's the weirdest energy in this town. We're so spread out. We have, what's our population, like 70,000? But it has such a small town vibe, and that's what I grew up with, right? Like, that's the energy I grew up with. That's what my parents grew up with. And so to be able to continue to support that and have conversations with people and know my business neighbors is huge. And those are really big conversations that I don't think other places necessarily get. In the same way that like other places might, like actual living situations, you might not know your neighbors or whatnot, but Eau Claire really has a thumb on like being able to talk to your neighbors and have the conversations about like, did you guys have a weird day today? Was there some weird energy? Did you get the weird people in today? Or did you, like for me, it's like I get to have those conversations and it's not like an odd thing that I'm just like walking next door and asking as somebody. Or like with Blue Ox next to me, right? So like with the Condits, they ran out of printer paper. So like one day they walked over and like, I know you have the same system. Can we borrow one? Right? Like that's the beauty of the Eau Claire downtown community, is that it wants to support itself so much that like it hurts sometimes. It's so nice. So I think that for me is something that I feel very proud of, is to like just be able to like be part of the dialogue and have those conversations.
It's awesome. Those are awesome examples to hear. And I mean, I know we see it, but you guys see it in such a different, more personal level. It's really great to hear your experiences. Amy, do you have anything to add?
A lot of what I will say is a reiteration of what both Matt and Blaine said, with a slightly different feel to it. But the team that we have at Latitude and the team that we have at the Well has been, like, even before COVID, just so creative and so hardworking with a focus on the community, which is why it works. Without that, it just wouldn't work. And even the transition into COVID, we did not miss a single day of classes, which takes dedication and heart for what it is that the team is doing. And that goes so far because we care so much about the community. It is not an option to walk away from what is everybody's safe haven, in being able to explore movement and, have time of decompression and time to work it out and sweat it out. Like, we are a savior for a lot of individuals within the community at this time and before this time too. So it's been extremely challenging, not to enunciate too much on the COVID part, but it would not be an option without the strong team that we have and everybody's dedication to make sure that we are still showing up the same way we were before, if not even more so, for the community during these challenging times. And thinking outside the box too, and how we can serve. I mean, there's been good things to come out of this as well, but creative caps are on all the time. Like, how can we serve people even from afar now? So I feel very fortunate for the team that is in place, because I mean, I could not do all of these things on my own, and it really does take a strong team to make sure that we can all show up even on the super challenging days. And we all have days where we're kind of a mess in this whole thing too. So yeah, the team for sure. And then all the community, it's really interesting and just amazing to see how the members are showing up for each other as well. So we have a system within the studio where, so we're not sharing props right now. Each member has a designated set of props for themselves, and we're utilizing our cubby system in the studio for that. So they each have a designated cubby, but they've been leaving little gifts and cards in each other's cubbies during this time, which is, it just makes me want to cry. So yeah, it's just so darn cool to see how everything has morphed into something so much more powerful than I ever could have imagined with my business plan. And that, I think it's just so important to be so passionate about what it is that you're choosing and pursuing. If the passion isn't there, you'll burn out. but the passion will absolutely carry you through the most challenging times and make the awesome days just that much more powerful, and reinforcing the decision to say, yes, like this is possible. Yes, this will serve downtown. Yes, this will make our community better, and allow us to expand into, possibly things that we don't have in our community yet.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really great to hear your different perspectives, because your businesses are different, but I'll share that commonality of community and the downtown and things like that. So it's really great to hear those different examples from you guys. Thank you. I was going to say, kind of on the note, you guys were talking about this when, you talked about kind of the beginning and your business plans and things like that. Something that I know we get inquiries a lot in our office are spaces in the downtown, and you all have very unique, different spaces. Can you talk a little bit about, was that a challenge for you, or was it easy for you to find a space? Kind of that, because, there is that geographical challenge of there's only so much inventory or things like that. So, and maybe this is just like a random question, but I do feel like it's something that we get asked a lot in our office. So I just wanted to kind of know your guys' experience and how that worked out.
I feel like she has two different spaces, or a couple different spaces, so she might be able to better talk about some of that stuff. But for us, I had my broker's license for the last 8 years or so. So for us, quite honestly, we saw an opportunity with a piece of property to actually purchase. So we purchased the property in 2016. We had the idea in 2015. But quite honestly, even after we purchased the building, we didn't even know 100% whether or not we were going to open the ice cream parlor. So it took us, quite honestly, it was probably about a month or so that we kind of sat on it. We didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't know if we were going to lease it back out, or if we were going to start the business right away. And ultimately, we just decided, with tourism and everything the way that it was going in the trajectory of downtown, that there was no better time to start our business. So for us, I think we were a little lucky in that we were able to get one of the, I believe, one of the last buildings that was even for sale, really, in downtown. I quite frankly, I don't think I've seen a building even really come available in the last couple of years. I think My Place Bar was one of the last ones that I saw sold, but
Not
what's that?
Not for a low expense. There are some buildings. I can tell you that.
But yeah, so I think for us, it was we wanted to own our own building, and I think we found a gem. It was something that a lot of people wanted to see torn down, and being from Eau Claire, I think a lot of us know that Eau Claire is really good at tearing down old buildings. Not so great at keeping them around and really revamping them. So for us, it was about kind of shining up this old penny and making it beautiful again. So I feel pretty fortunate with that.
For Latitude, I looked at spaces all over the city. I wanted to be downtown, but I was having a hard time finding the right location. And where I'm ultimately at now, when I walked into the space, there was only one unit available, which was just over 1,000 square feet. And it was a lot smaller than what I was envisioning. I wanted to offer childcare from the beginning. I just wanted more space. I walked in, I'm like, I love it, but too small. Like, I need it to be able to fit more people in the room. So I actually started negotiations and early build out phases on a unit in Water Street. But the person that owns that building it became very apparent that it wasn't going to be a good relationship. So I walked away from that and went back to this space, and Jeff Moding has been wonderful to work with, such a great guy. And then I was very fortunate that a year in, the unit next to me opened up. So I doubled my footprint as I was starting the second year. And then we've expanded one more time. So I've tripled my footprint since opening in 2015. So it's worked out really well for that unit. I'm glad I said yes to the smaller space and just crossed my fingers hoping for something to open up. So we almost have the whole array there. There's one more unit. Cost Cutters is there that can hang around as long as they'd like. They're welcome. But and then for the well is in the unit where Ignite used to be. So Ignite closed, and for that space, I was approached to see if I could attempt to make something work in that space. So I did modify some things and update it and shift some things around to make it more aesthetically appealing, but it was a lot easier, a lot less expensive build out in comparison to Latitude. So we have showers and that kind of thing that I had put in at Latitude, where those were already in at the well, which was great. So.
And again, story of my life, a little different for me. I'm very fortunate. When I left my previous job without any plan beyond this. So I was the lead graphic designer at a company for 4.5 years. That was my job. I was the head graphic designer. Got burnt out, just quit. It wasn't a good space for me. And so I spent some time figuring out what I wanted to do. And part of my journey was appreciating that, like, I've always wanted to have this just like space that people can come into, and like no pressure to like buy, just like a comfortable space you can come in and like get something fun for yourself, somebody else, like super easy. One of my biggest things was inspirations. I lived in the city, is Patina. It's a great shop. If you haven't gone, check it out. They're great. You know, so like having a space like that where like you don't feel obligated to come in and buy something, I think actually opens itself to people buying more, right? If people are comfortable, I think the experience, I think actually what everybody who's on this panel can really speak to is the experience is so big. And if you can create a beautiful moment for people, you know, it's like Ramones, it's the scent, it's the atmosphere, you've got the thing, and with Latitude, you've got this beautiful, comfortable space. Like, so much of any person going outside of their house to spend money is an experience. And if you can appreciate that, that's, for me, is 90% of your battle for a business, right? Like, whether it's a restaurant or whatever, if you can make people come in and feel comfortable and feel like at ease, they don't have to spend money, right, at that moment, but they may, or they'll come back. Or like, for me, and that's where it's different for me as a retail, it's like, it's creating a space that people feel good in. And so for me, what happened is I'm lucky enough to have had the experience to get a footing before Pablo opened. And that was a big clutch for me, was acknowledging like Pablo Center's opening. That's going to be huge downtown. If I'm going to open my business, if I want to do this at all, it has to be now. And I think that was in my business plan. I think I literally said like, it has to be now and it has to be downtown. Otherwise, Raggedy Man wouldn't survive. Raggedy Man by Oakwood Mall wouldn't survive, right? Look at how many chain stores are closing. The mall's closing, right? Which again, I think speaks to the strength of Eau Claire supporting Eau Claire. We really want to see the downtown survive and thrive, and we're doing everything we can for that. So for me, that was such a big element in the business, was I want to get my foot in the door before Pablo opens. I want to have my name down there before Pablo opens, so I can say like, we've been part of the journey, right? Like, we're part of the conversation, and it's been really good for that. I'm probably the smallest retail space downtown, I think. I think I'm just over 450 square feet. So we're le petite, but just Amy, right? The hope for me is that I can expand. We got some neighbors that can have their business anywhere, and we're hoping that when their leases expire, I can get them. But beyond that, the conversation is just like, being downtown is huge. And initially, I looked at the train, the old train, model train store.
Oh, yeah.
Right across the street from the Mousetrap, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right. So it didn't, but the biggest holdup was it didn't have a door on the street. You had to go into a thing and go into the thing, and the windows were tinted. It wasn't great, right? For a retail space, just like, meh. But I was like in conversations. Had been in conversations so much that I was probably about 4 hours away from signing a lease with the train spot. In terms of like talking about remodeling, we had all these HVAC, like we had broken down all these things. And again, I'm very lucky. Happened to just have some friends who had, I know the owners of Draft. design who are in the back end of the building that I'm in, and they have the space that I'm in right now, and they had been renting it almost as a placeholder. The one of the owners of the business has a retail background, and she's like, we just didn't want to see this space go to something like another law office or whatever, you know what I mean? And so they're like, when they heard that I was about to sign a lease for that, they said, don't let him sign anything. Have him come look at the space. So I mean, I'm not even kidding. It was literally like checkbook in hand, lease agreement like ready, and they're like, "Don't do it." And I looked at this space, and it was this beautiful corner space. And I mean, it was office. It needed work, right? And that's part of the journey.
The paint job
like,
added
for me,
so
is
much.
like making it an experience. It's like this isn't what I want, but like I think I can make it what I want. And we got there, right? It took some money, and the landlord just being like, have at it.
Awesome.
But like, you know, for me, a big part, and I think, again, this speaks to Eau Claire of like preserving our journey, is that I walked in and I was like, oh, drop down, there's carpet, there's that, you know what I mean? I took a ladder, I went up through the 2 drop ceilings and saw the original metal ceiling. And I was like, yeah, we're good. We can make this work, regardless of what it is. And I mean, 2.5 years later, we're still very happy with it. And I think one of the funniest things I consistently hear from people is like, I haven't looked up in here. There's just, I have as much space up as I do here.
That was something
So I
after
think
the
for me,
photo
it literally was like one of those like, don't sign anything. And I remember feeling horrible calling the people that I had gone through like weeks of lease agreements with and being like, I'm really sorry, I've gone somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's like speaks to all your different experiences of just, you know, knowing what's right for your business. And, you know,
Right.
At some point you do have to open, right? But I think you all trusted your guts too, which is really important in being an entrepreneur. And
it's huge, right? Yeah. So think of Amy, think of your business if you had been on Water Street. Like, what would your journey be like, right? It's so different. And those, I think, are all conversations we've had with ourselves of being like, the downtown, like the Barstow area, has so many good things. And not that other places don't, but there's such an energy and a connection, I think, between business owners too, that like, again, we speak to and like, we know each other and we have conversations, we have like little banter that feels really good. Like I can't imagine my business anywhere else. It wouldn't have thrived anywhere else.
Yeah. So I know, well, we're obviously big supporters of Downtown Eau Claire. It's in our name. And I just want to make this quick so that we can, you know, open it up for questions because there's about like 7 minutes left of the time frame. And so I guess in one word or a sentence, if we can keep it to that, what is a challenge of having a business in the downtown as well? Because I do want to be realistic that there are some challenges that are associated with it. So round robin, quick on that one.
To our parking for me, it really is. It's I am in proper heart of downtown. I feel right, like, and I consistently have issues with. I had today. I'm about to call somebody tomorrow to talk to their landlord about their parking because I'm watching 7 spots getting taken up. That every people are coming out and shifting spots, which is frustrating, especially during a pandemic. We watch spots that should be open for patrons getting taken away. That's my honest. That parking is a nightmare for me.
Yep.
And I was going to say that the parking perception problem, I think, is a problem. When you were talking, I can see where that area there probably is a little bit more of a parking issue, but I do feel like there's this perception that we have a bad parking issue in downtown. Therefore, we have a bad problem with parking. We're really. Go ahead.
Can I clarify that?
Your turn is
Part of
over.
the conversation
Your moment.
Eau Claire, we
mute
train Eau Claire to walk more than a block to get places is also part of the conversation, right? Like there's parking options, but from what I can see, everything within walking range of me is taken up by people who should be parking there.
Right.
people go to the Mall of America and walk miles.
Right.
Downtown Eau Claire and they won't walk 3 blocks.
Right. And that's what I was going to say is I do feel like it's a perception of bad parking. I do think that, some of these areas are a little bit tougher, but Meredith, the space where you're at, it's a little tougher because you have limited parking on the street. But we do. I mean, we have 2 large parking ramps in Eau Claire, and for now we have a railroad lot that has another 75, 80 parking spots there. In our area, it's something that we hear quite often is, oh, where do people park around here? And it's because we have 3 spots out front, but people tend to forget that, well, there's 3 spots there, but there's 80 spots right across the street, and it's this literal stone's throw away. I think that's one. I was really trying to think of another downfall of being in downtown Eau Claire. I'm not sure if I can really think of one, quite honestly. I think that there's, like Matt was saying before, there's such a support system in Eau Claire, especially just to see our downtown prosper, where I feel like for many, many years, it's been Southside, Oakwood Mall. That's where you want to be. If you want to have a business, you're going to thrive out there because you have such a huge population base and people coming in. But really, I think there's a lot of people that are seeking out goods in downtown Eau Claire and just seeking out Phoenix Park and, somewhere to walk around and just walk on the streets downtown. So I think it's a phenomenal area to be. Not sure of many downsides other than parking. I feel like it was just the obvious one that everybody loves to talk about. So
I have a large parking lot in front of the studio. It's free and there's no 2-hour limit. Matt, I'm sorry.
Be nice, okay?
So latitude is totally set. While we do have that 2-hour parking limitation, but generally, I mean, our earliest class times are early morning, like before any other shop is even open. So we're not really battling for spots then either. But even, I mean, it's really just not a thing because we're on the end of downtown. So we have the whole bridge and like open lots closer to RCU.
Again, for me,
yeah.
Part of it too then gets, like for me, I'm part of the bid now, right? So I'm part of the South Barstow bid. So which I don't think that's something we're trying to work on, right? Like, I don't think most people appreciate that, like, having a business downtown means you're part of this bid. So it's the business improvement district, right? So regardless of your involvement in it, you're paying for it. And the conversation is, it's always doing right. So like, I can speak for the South Barstow. I think, well, Amy, you've got your foot in both. You guys, you two would be in the North Barstow bid. But the conversation is like, we get money from property owners, and the bid is built up of property owners and business owners. So the conversation is, what are we doing with this money that we can take and make our downtown or make our business district better, right? So for the South Barstow bid, again, I can only speak for that. I know that the North Barstow and South kind of piggyback, but we do things like the flower program. We have a lot of our bid. We take care of some things like a couple years ago when you couldn't walk anywhere because the snow was so high. The South Barstow bid now pays extra money for clearing the sidewalks, right? So like being able to be part of those conversations is also really big. And so for me, and I think it sounds like most other business owners, the parking conversation gets to be like a real conversation, and getting a vote in that and getting an opinion in that. But the thing that I don't think a lot of businesses appreciate is that they all have that voice, right? You're all part of a bid. And the idea of the bid is to encourage growth and support and all these wonderful things for the area that your business is in, which is why you picked that area. Downtown especially, we have some of the highest bid numbers in terms of funding, and some of the strongest voices in terms of events. And I think that's another thing that we're working on, is making sure that people are aware that that's part of your journey. Is if you're downtown, it's not that your business is just downtown, it's that you're part of the conversation downtown. whether
Yeah.
you're aware of it or not. You're paying to be a part of that conversation. And I think that's really huge to be aware of.
Yeah. All right, so we are at 8:30, but I do want to open it up for any of the attendees to ask any questions. If you feel like you really wanted to ask something of these three individuals here today, and then I'll just give a quick overview of the timeline with Jumpstart. So I'll just open it up. Feel free to unmute yourselves and ask your question if you have any. All right, I can appreciate silence. I'm not good at it, but so if you have
I'll
any...
actually start off with a quick question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So for the panelists, what did you find to be the most difficult part of your business plan and getting ready for the Jumpstart grant? And can you speak to kind of how do you bring all the pieces together? Was there anyone that you turned to specifically, or other ways to overcome that?
I've got a good one for you. So I think the toughest thing for me was the financials. I think what the easiest part for me was the passion, and I think that's what I had going for me in my year. Is I think we had an original idea, something that I was really passionate about, and I think the judges my year really kind of bought into the passion that I brought in a lot of that. The thing that I struggled with the most, and the thing that gave me the most anxiety, was the financials. And just really not knowing how to really project out how many people are really going to come out on a given year. And it's actually kind of interesting now looking back at our projections and just seeing how wrong and how off they really were, in a good way, but really how wrong they were. But I remember Western Dairyland, I did consult with them a little bit. Nobody gave me Luke Kempen's name and number, and I wish they would have, because Luke and I actually have a relationship now, and I love the man. But I went through Western Dairyland. They kind of helped me out and just kind of had some Excel spreadsheets and that kind of thing. I would highly recommend them or Luke Kempen. I think he'd be a phenomenal advocate. But I quite frankly, I remember in my proposal, in standing in front of the judges, something that we've done with real estate, and I think it's something that has proven to be successful with the business as well at Ramones, is we are extremely conservative when it comes to projections and running our numbers. So we assumed low traffic, and if it worked with low traffic, then it was going to work with adequate traffic. So we assumed the worst, and that's how we kind of based a lot of our numbers. Something else that I think kind of helped us out from the get-go is kind of planning for the worst and planning an exit strategy, and that's something that I've heard since as well. And it's just having an exit strategy in mind and knowing what that looks like, and knowing what you need to do from day one to make sure you don't have an exit strategy that you have to fulfill. But yeah, for me, it was the financials, and it was something that we worked through, but it was tough at the beginning.
For the other panelists, if there's anything drastically different than that advice, if not, I want to just make sure that the other attendees can ask questions.
I got a question. I like questions.
Same. Sorry. Go ahead. Helen.
So what do you contribute your success to, like, generating sales or new customers? So as a new business, I mean, do you guys have like a pre-existing, like, in the photography world, we say, okay, call on your friends, call on your family, and start photographing senior portraits and families and local weddings and stuff, so kind of get your guys' name out there. You guys started brick and mortar stores. So what were some of the things that made you guys successful in generating sales and new customers?
Caring. By far, for me, like, well, all of us, I think I'll speak on behalf of all of us when I say that every interaction is so valuable, but if we're just approaching from an authentic place and literally just wanting to show up for people and care for them on that journey when they're walking into Matt's store, like finding the right gift, having a family night out at Blaine's, stopping at Ramone's and having a good experience. that stuff really only happens when you care. And like you're caring to the deepest layer that you have available to you in those communications, and offering people options and meeting people where they're at as well. So one thing at Latitude that we have started doing once the business reached a good place financially, we've opened it up where if any member expresses any financial strain, especially during this COVID time, we have lots of members that are on free memberships or discounted memberships. We've been offering that for years, but that has been a really great thing for us to just truly show how much we care. And inevitably that, you know, we're cared for too in that same regard. Like we are just all a big family and we care for each other. Therefore, the business is cared for too.
Well, I'm crying inside. So thank you.
So it's so gross, but it's so true. I think that, right? In the same way, I think from Raggedy Man, part of my journey is being aware of other businesses. And that's always been the conversation, right? It's like knowing what's happening. What are my neighbors doing? Are they selling that? Great. If they are, it makes no sense for me to, right? And I think having those moments of appreciating what's happening and what people are doing, what people are supporting, like how can you support that? How can you put energy into other things? I like to think of it as like the Santa Claus from Miracle on 34th Street. Like if I don't have it, I can tell you where to get it, right? And whether that's like a good ice cream treat or a good spiritual retreat, you know what I mean? Like it's all part of the energy downtown, and it's all so strong, and it's such a really good place to be. Like I've never felt more part of a community. And growing up here my whole life, I've been here for 20 years. There was never any moment downtown that I can recall. Like genuinely have no moments, I have no memories my whole life downtown. And now I think what's beautiful is how many moments that we're creating. And that's part of the energy, right? So whether it's going to like a beautiful yoga class or going to like even the daycare at the yoga, right? Like there are opportunities for people to experience things downtown at all ages. Ice cream, Avo pants, they're getting a lot. But you know what I mean? Like it's really insane how strong the energy is downtown when like you tap into it. And that's just like being aware and being part of the conversation. Involve yourself, talk to your neighbors, know where you're at. It's huge, huge.
So I'll jump in very, very quickly. So a couple things kind of pop up into my mind. I'm not a huge social media person, but I think that's been huge for us is being on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, we're not on TikTok, but we think about and we talk about being on TikTok. But really, I think that's huge, quite honest. That's a big one. Also, another word that comes to my mind is a niche, and really maximizing your niche. And you know, there's other places where you can go and do yoga in Eau Claire. There are other places where you can go and get ice cream in Eau Claire. And there were when we opened, and there's even more places now that you can get yoga and ice cream and goods for family and friends and that kind of thing. But it's how you deliver it and what you're bringing that's different than everywhere else. And to bring it all the way back to what Amy is saying is I feel like that's been a huge and a very, very key thing for Ramones as well is that customer experience. And Matt talked about it as well, like the environment and having a space where people feel welcome and it's a place that, you know, they relate to. And, you know, it was a huge honor of ours this last year in Volume 1 to be named the best customer service in Eau Claire. And that was ahead of Festival Foods and some of these other places that are known for their customer service. But that's something that we feel is our niche. One of our niches is really treating everybody that comes in the door as they're one of our family or one of our friends. And how would we talk to these people? So I think it's finding your niche, and you're not going to be the last one to do the business that you're coming up with. And even if it is something original now, you know, you might have somebody 2 years down the road that's like, hey, man, like I love the idea of having a commercial kitchen that I can rent out to other people, and they've got to be making bank with this, and I'm just going to copy them and do it again. And that's kind of what we've seen from the ice cream. But as long as you're coming at it from your own genuine spot, I don't think you have anything to worry about. And having that niche is
just to piggyback off that really quick too. Fully sidetracked me. Totally gone. So sorry.
That's right.
You really threw a curveball at me with I had a solid thought, and you really hit a home run there.
Does anybody else, attendees, have any other questions that they want to ask?
Somebody's got to have something. Come on, though.
Not seeing any of the other attendees unmute, which I don't want to pressure anybody. So maybe they just got all of the wisdom from you all already, and you
so
answered
much
all
wisdom.
their questions. Yes.
Well, I will say this. I feel like we're kind of winding down right now, and I'm going to put Amy and Matt under pressure as well here. But quite honestly, if anybody ever has any questions about any of the Jumpstart stuff, or you just want somebody to talk to, or pick somebody's brain, or I love drinking coffee. I love drinking a beer here and there. Or
You like
I drink tea and wine. So
I love kombucha. Shift has some phenomenal kombucha. Honestly, like I would love to help anybody if there's any questions that you have. I would love to be a resource. If you could think of me as being a resource, I'd be flattered and very humbled. So I think this is all kind of fun and partially goofy, but quite frankly, I think the three of us here, I think all of us would love to support you and help you in any way that we possibly can.
I can confirm. I actually talked to Adam Condit. I talked to Adam Condit before my presentation because I had such anxiety about the financial part. Like, that's not my background, right? Graphic design, mass communication. That's my degree. And that's what I've been working in. And then to like run a business is such a foreign language. So that's where it's tapping the resources. Luke Kempkin, huge. And I talked with Adam and I pulled him aside. I was like, so like, what do they ask you? And to be fair, it's unfortunate that he's not here because his degree is math. So he gets an insanely different perspective because everything for him is just like accounting. So he could speak to all that insanely well. And not that I can't. I know my numbers. I could speak to them when I presented, but I think there's a part of anxiety. Sometimes I think for this, part of the journey is just something good for downtown.
Yeah, for sure.
Something that you can support for downtown, something that so downtown can support, right? Something that can be part of the conversation and community downtown.
Yeah. I see. Sorry, I just want to make sure. No. It looks like you unmuted. So I just want to make sure. Did you have a question that you wanted to ask?
I'm good.
Okay. I just saw you unmuted. So I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, I'm just curious what everybody is seeing right now for an economic impact of everything going on. Is it Eau Claire is overly exciting to be in. We enjoy it immensely. And I'm just wondering if the what's everybody's mood right now? Somber, excited. A lot of great things happen, but I'm really trying to see it without being there.
I can't quite put my thumb on everybody else, but for us, I think we're just kind of chalking it up to just a funky year. I think what I'm personally seeing is just a lot of people aren't necessarily going and walking around downtown and going shop hopping, that kind of thing. I think that there's a lot of people that are just tending to stay home and maybe not come out. I feel like a lot of our base at Ramones are very kind of cautious about COVID and fearing being exposed, and we have a lot of positivity coming around. not many negative people coming into our space. We have had a few, of course, but overwhelmingly, people are very supportive of the actions that we're trying to do, the precautions that we're trying to take. Our numbers are down at Ramon's, and I think that has a lot to do with, I think tourism as a whole in Eau Claire is just down right now. So if you have a business that's not tied to tourism, I think you're going to be okay. But having, many businesses shut down at the beginning of COVID, especially, and there's still a handful of businesses that have not opened up, I think that kind of hurts things in a small way. But I'm still positive long term, or I'm optimistic long term. I think that this is a short term problem, and as soon as at a national and global scale, I think once we have all this figured out with COVID, that will be right back to where we have been in the past. So.
My answer to that would vary depending on the day that you ask me. So today is a pretty moderately enjoyable day, but it really is all over the place. So owning 2 businesses that are being replicated in every online platform, and a lot of those platforms being free or literally a third of the price that we're offering our service at, it's created a really interesting dynamic for us. So Latitude being 5 years old, I consider us being back in phase 1 at this point. We still have hundreds of members, and we're fine, but it's not what it was. But we do need to be more creative in our offering, which has just been really interesting. And some of those days when technology doesn't cooperate, it is just really humbling and really upsetting. And then days when things align. And a few weeks ago, we launched an online yoga teacher training program, which has been received very well. Like, it just feels like a really huge win. But I think overall, to reiterate what Blaine said, I think morale overall is still high, and people kind of waiting it out and just doing our best to get through it. But there's certainly days where we feel defeat as well.
There we go. And again, surprise, surprise, a little different over here. Which, I mean, again, I think speaks to downtown, right? Like, we all have substantially different journeys with it. For me, I mean, like, we look at something like ice cream, which is seasonal, and something like yoga, which is in person, and something like mine, which is, for me, I had built my whole business on the experience of like coming in and buying something and like having that moment. So when we shut down, it was hard, right? I had 0 online presence, and my business plan had 0 online presence. I had never had planned on being online. Part of my whole journey was just being exclusively brick and mortar and having that moment so that people could come in and experience the shop, the sense and how it looks, and like being downtown is part of that journey. So when we shut down, it was hard. And me, I have a graphic design degree, and me stumbling through trying to like make a website was not great. I have a lot of shit too, is the problem. Right? Like, I've got a lot of things to sell. So it was part of the conversation was like, what do I do with this time? So I mean, puzzles kept me going through most of this, which I love, right? Like, that's something I love, and that's something I got to sell. And so now the conversation has shifted, right? It's back to brick and mortar. And my numbers are shifting again. I mean, for me, in terms of foot traffic and in terms of like pre-COVID projections for a day, I'm hitting those again with limited hours, with limited time. And that's, I mean, I'm not doing it day to day, right? So like today was Tuesday, and I hit what I'd project for a pre-COVID Tuesday today with my numbers. It's huge. That's huge. And my Saturdays and Fridays are doing the same thing. For me, the part of my anxiety as being a single employee of my business is that, like, if I get exposed to it, I lose 2 weeks of it. So for me, that's where I'm doing the limited numbers. I'm doing the limited time frames. And it's a little different. It's just kind of like dancing with it and figuring out, like, what does it look like? The biggest challenge for me right now is the fall and winter. So November and December account for 1/3 of my total year sales. So pending school opening and the world shutting down again, shrugs. I've already, the only advantage now is that I have foresight to know what shutdown looks like. Where I think back to March and just being like, this is a weird thing that's happening in New York or Spain, right? And then all of a sudden I was like, Clancy is 3:00. You need to get everybody out of your bar on St. Patrick's Day. And I was like, oh, this is real. You can't go anywhere anymore. And so like that moment was like, I distinctly remember that moment of like watching people leave Clancy's bar at 3:00 on St. Patrick's Day, being like, what does this mean? And so now we have the foresight to plan for alternatives, right? So I will not be online this holiday, but I have some really fun things planned if it happens. So that's part of the journey. That's what we do. That's the hustle of a small business owner, is you find ways to adapt to make yourself fit what you need to keep going with your brand, right? And I think keeping our brand is a big part.
Yeah. Well, that's all great insight once again. I am going to just share the last couple of things about the Jumpstart program so everybody gets that information. Hopefully you can see it. That the timeline is that the deadline is Monday, September 7th. We'll have our judging panel review those applications and the business plans that second week. And then the third week, if your plan is selected, you will be brought in for, well, actually probably a webinar or like a video conference to give your presentation about your business. We'll still have to figure that out a little bit. And then we are planning an awards luncheon at the end of September, the 30th on a Wednesday at the Brewing Project. Depending on how everything goes, we'll just have to keep that flexible as well. We do have a website for this that has more information about our sponsors and the process, and that's that bit.ly Jumpstart EC, or if you go to downtowneauclaire.org, you'll be able to just find it by searching Jumpstart. And then also, this is our general email, the Downtown at Eau Claire WI.gov, where you can just reach out, and if you have any questions, we can also help connect you to like Blaine and things like that if you do have specific questions for any of the panelists tonight.
Specifically Blaine.
Specifically just Blaine. He volunteered. Nobody else is going to be talking to anybody else.
You have to ask Blaine any questions. They'll get to it.
Yep. And then the last thing I just want to bring up is next week we are offering also another free panel. We're partnering with Collab on this one, and it's highlighting different business competitions in our area. So the Red Letter Grant, the Idea Challenge, and then Venture Home, which is through the Wisconsin system. And so the judges from each of those competitions will just kind of talk about the ins and outs of business plans and what they've seen to be successful to hopefully prepare you once again for the application that's due on that following Monday. So that is just the information I wanted to share about that. You can find the information on Eventbrite. It's through Collab once again, or you can, we're a co-host about it on Facebook is the other option to find that information, and it's listed on our website as well. So I thank you guys for sticking around and for the really engaging conversation. And thank you again to our panelists and our business owners and former Jumpstart winners. We really appreciate your insight and just the candor about what it takes to own and operate a successful small business and big business in Eau Claire. Yeah, so once again, thanks again for your time and have a good rest of your night.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Have a good night.